I'm Johnny Smith.
I'm Richard Porter.
And this is Smith & Sniff, a podcast in which two friends talk about cars and many other things. I was in Nice airport recently and I found a Mitsubishi Jet-Tail, Rich.
Oh.
Yeah.
What a treat.
It was a treat, actually. I very nearly took a photo of it, then I realised there were gentlemen facing the wall doing what they do. And I thought, I'm not getting my camera out, that's wrong. But
you see, in contrast, I was at Membry Services on the M4 yesterday, and they have those stupid Dyson futuristic scooter nose dryers, and it just blew water all over my trousers.
Moped handlebars.
So, you know.
Yeah, great.
It's very a sort of a story of contrasts.
Do you know what I loved about the Mitsubishi Jet-Tail? And I don't know if they all have this, but I just noticed it while I was staring at it, letting my hands get dried effectively. It said genuine Mitsubishi and then underneath made in Japan. And I haven't seen that sort of confident language used in a while, and I liked it. It was like, don't worry, this is the real deal, and we're still making this stuff in the country, which has very high standards. So it's okay.
I presume that Japanese companies are self-aware enough to be doing this deliberately, as in you hear made in Japan and you think, ooh, precise, high quality.
I think you do.
That's nice.
It's probably because of the influx of so many Chinese goods, I would say. Because if this was off of the 70s and you'd put proudly made in Japan on it, there'd be a lot of people that would scoff.
Yes.
So how these things have changed, thankfully.
I think I've told you before about my dad worked for Esso.
Yeah.
And Esso had a slightly weird company car system in that you didn't get just given a car from a fleet manager's list of you could have a Sierra or a Cavalier or a Montego kind of thing. You were given every, I think, 3 years, a lump sum to go and buy your own car.
Oh, yeah, you did say this, which is very odd.
Very odd, and you could buy anything you wanted. So if you wanted to top up the lump sum given to you by Esso, so they would give you an amount that was equivalent to sort of an appropriate size of car for your station. And my dad used it to buy a Talbot Solara. We'll gloss over that. But he could have, if he'd so felt inclined, just added thousands of pounds to it and gone and bought a Mercedes S-Class or something. The only thing was that I think culturally within the company, it was frowned upon to do such a thing because then you may have overshadowed the boss and whatever he'd bought because he'd have been given more money. The only stipulation was that it had to be a four-door in case you needed to drive clients around.
Yes.
My dad worked in the consultancy area of the company that they did lubricants for heavy machinery and stuff. But one of my dad's colleagues successfully argued that he never drove clients around and that in the event that he suddenly had to, it was okay as long as he had quite a large back seat in a two-door car and managed to swing it that he got an Audi coupe.
I remember you telling me this. Yeah, that he had a coupe GT.
Yeah, that's right. The 5-cylinder.
Yeah, so, like the one I used to have. Gosh, I miss that car.
Yeah. That was the first time as a kid. This was the early 80s. It was the first time as a kid that I remember feeling that sensation of your stomach getting left behind as a car accelerates.
Brilliant.
Was in the back of my dad's mate Ron's Audi coupe when he came round. He just got it and he came round to show it to my dad. And we went out for a drive and he booted it.
And
I remember that, my stomach's left behind, and also that incredible noise because it was a 5-cylinder.
Oh, gosh, so good.
Just everything about that car was deeply cool at the time compared to my dad's Solara, including the fact it had that pneumatic central locking.
Yes, it did. And do you know what? It's really reliable.
Was it?
Yeah. And it was good at sort of self-diagnosing a problem because same as Merc 123s, if there was a hole in the one of the pipes, it would hiss as you were driving along at speed. It would sound like you had an annoyed snake in the inner door panel. And you just go, yeah, okay, so that's passenger side, right towards the bottom left of the door. I've got air, got a puncture. And so you could just diagnose it, which I really enjoyed. Yeah.
Anyway, the reason I bring this up, rather long-winded way of saying that the only other stipulation on my dad's slightly weird Esso company car scheme of the 70s and 80s was you couldn't have a Japanese car.
Oh.
Yeah. That was a
car racism.
That was a hard, yeah, exactly. That was a hard rule. You could have anything you want. You could top it up. You could, as my dad's colleague Ron proved, argue against the four-door policy and get an Audi coupe. You could do all sorts. It was a very strange and quite relaxed system, but no Japanese cars.
Wow. Wow. Gosh, that's bad, isn't it?
I mean, in retrospect, it is, and you go absolutely unenforceable now. If it got out that the Esso Corporation was saying, no, you can't have any. I mean, we say that, but what if, in this day and age, with this sort of growing awareness that the Chinese car industry is coming to steamroller Euro manufacturers if they can, what if a big company that had control over its company car policy just went, no Chinese cars. We don't like what they're doing. We don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
And so we're drawing a line, because I think that was the perception, wasn't it, of the Japanese car companies. It's why there was that gentleman's agreement about how many cars they could sell in Europe.
Yeah.
And it was a bit reminiscent of what's going on with cars from China now, in as much as there was an element of it where it was basically European car companies going, it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair that cars seems to be higher quality and lower price than ours. That's not fair. And you go, well, but
we're the consumers, so we'll choose.
Yeah.
No, it's completely.
Obviously, ignoring the fact that sort of enormous help and subsidisation from the state and things like that. But fundamentally, if the product is better and cheaper, then you can't blame customers for buying it.
That's how the chicken tax came in the States, wasn't it? For the likes of the Volkswagen van, the VW.
Yeah, it was
getting very popular.
It was tit for tat.
Yeah. And they didn't want...
It's a weird tit-for-tat system. One of the things that was going the other way, for people who don't know, is this chicken tax thing where light commercial vehicles coming from outside the US, or from Europe and Japan, were subject to an extra tax, which was but also there were certain other things the US decided to tax as sort of revenge for taxes that were put onto American products. And I think one of them was brandy. But it was all because of chickens going the other way.
Yeah.
Cheap chicken was slapped with a tax to avoid it flooding the market. And the Americans went, fine, you tax our chicken, we'll tax your light commercial vehicles? Yeah, that'll show you.
Because when I originally heard it, I thought it was something to do with what the size of the commercial vehicle and how many chickens you might get in them. Oh. And therefore, that's how the tax is calculated. I was like, that can't be right. That's a stupid idea.
That seems extremely unwieldy.
But that's not it.
No, there's a whole backstory to it. And actually, it's in one of my boring books. But
I like your boring books, Rich. They're not boring.
Well, but they have boring in the title. So, but yeah, this all happened in the 60s. And,
in the when?
Oh, sorry, in the 60s.
The 60s.
The Europeans, or certain European countries, taxed American chicken, and so the Americans went, right, what are the main things that Europe's sending us at the moment? And it was like brandy and light commercial vehicles and a couple of other things as well. I can't remember what they were, and but it was a swinging tax on any imported light commercial vehicle, which is why the Subaru Brat landed in the US with these crappy little plastic garden chairs screwed to the pickup bed so that they could go, well, no, it's a car, look, because it's got 4 seats. Yeah. And then the importer just unscrewed them and took them away. But this practice still goes on today.
It does, yeah.
The chicken tax, as far as I know, the taxes have been lifted on the chicken going that way and the brandy and the other things going the other way. But the light commercials, it's still in place, which is why Ford Transit Connect, when they were selling the Turkish-made Transit Connect in the US,
false.
It had to arrive with rear windows and rear seats, and they had a whole facility on US soil dedicated to blanking over the windows, removing the seats, filling in the holes in the floor, and doing all the other things they need to do to turn it back into a van.
I mean,
it seemed ridiculously expensive.
Yeah. But also a bit like you're buying a car that's been shop soiled because it's been hacked about already. Oh.
Well, that's it. You just imagine it's going to introduce rattles. Although I suppose you're just taking stuff away, so maybe it's not as bad. But anyway, yes. Well, how do we get here?
I don't know. I was just trying to think that. I can't remember. That's annoying, isn't it?
Oh, because you saw a Mitsubishi jet tail that said made in Japan on it, and that sounds reassuring because we're not racist about Japanese things anymore, hopefully.
No.
But we might be a bit about Chinese things.
Because I was there, right? I was in Nice, like, test driving the Renault 5. But it's called the Renault R5. And
is it?
It is. I think it's actually classed as the R5.
Oh.
But nobody cares because it's just going to be the Renault 5, isn't it? I finally got to drive it and took a friend of ours along, Mr. Greg James, DJ.
Greg James out of Radio 1?
Yeah, he came along.
He's been our celebrity friend of the show.
Well, as he explained on camera in what will be a forthcoming video, he wanted to come along because he's a massive Renault fan and an enthusiast of the south of France. Long-time enthusiast of the south of France. And that is the case. So he came along. And I have to say,
I wouldn't trust someone who isn't a fan of the south of France, unless you really hate wind. Actually, you do hate wind.
I do hate the wind. And when I was there, luckily, it was so beautifully still. I had at least 2 absolutely epic piss vistas, and I made the most of it. Admittedly, one of them was in the driving rain, but it was still very atmospheric. And on top of it's the route Napoleon.
The route Napoleon, it's a beautiful route, isn't it?
We went up and down it a few times, like where Napoleon would have done. Napoleon was a massive fan of chassis control. And as a result, the Napoleonic route has got many interesting switchbacks and that to really challenge the underpinnings of the motor car. And that's what Napoleon was all about. Yeah.
Don't spoil your video, but did you like the Renault R5, Renault 5R?
The new Renault 5 is... I'm going to put it out there. The new Renault 5 is as important and as good as when Mini relaunched in 2001, with obviously the brand, a retro-ish new version of an icon. That's what Renault has done, and not only that.
Wow.
Obviously, we've got the 4 coming because that was announced and it has been shown. And if you haven't seen that, listeners, you ought to have a look at that because that's cool, based on the same underpinnings. A bit more sit-up and bag than the 5. And then the Twingo's coming in EV form. And so I think Renault have put a lot of eggs in the fit-for-purpose smaller electric car basket, but they've had skin in the game for a long time, which I'm keen to remind people. Because the Zoe's been around, I think, a decade, or the best part of a decade. And the Zoe's one of those cars that was never cool, but it was actually a good car. It just, nobody ever thought it was cool. And I ran one for nearly a year and really liked it, thought it was good. So you can tell when you get in the 5 that this is not their first electric rodeo.
Yeah.
They've done this. And so it's not perfect at all. There are niggles, but by Jove, I'm going to use that term. By Jove, it's a great product.
I was disappointed to see from some other reviews that won't be as good as your one, and people should definitely watch it when it comes out. But I did notice people calling out the rear seat space as being quite cramped.
Yeah.
Now, I bring this up because I'm eyeing those 5s and thinking, ooh, could I see one of those in our lives when the E-Up's going, and maybe we'll wait a bit and we'll get one of those. But our children ain't getting any smaller, and I do sort of look at it and go, oh, is that going to be too squashed back there?
I think it's fine for short distances if you're an adult, like a sizable adult, and it's just fine for kids, absolutely fine for kids. I think if you're leggy, like you are, and I am, and Greg James is, you can't sit behind yourself. And the reason, and I think Renault's done this tactically because they've gone for class-leading boot space, which is important because it's sort of killed quite a few really good cars of this this segment. I mean, the Fiat 500's got a gash boot. The Honda E has an appalling boot. It's hilariously bad. This thing, and the Mini's not great. This thing comes in and goes, yeah, we've got a massive boot, 326 litres, which is big, by the way.
I wonder, did they research this? Because our E-Up has... It's actually not as tiny as it looks, the boot, because it's deep. It goes down into the belly of the car, seemingly. It's quite weird, and you can get a false floor, but we don't have that. So it's just this big pit there. And you can get enough stuff in it. It's not terrible. And I feel like, personally, or in our family, we use the back seats a lot more than we use the boot to anything like its capacity. And I'd rather have a little bit more legroom for my increasingly tall children than I would a really cavernous boot. But maybe Renault's researched this and found otherwise.
Yeah, maybe. I'll tell you the other thing is it would be doing it a huge and I'm not going to give too much details away because, I fundamentally want to guide people towards my YouTube channel. But it would be doing it a disservice to call it a city car because it's a lot more than that.
Does it feel small when you drive it? Because I can't quite get a handle. Even having stood next to one, I can't quite get a handle on how big it is.
It's 3.92 metres long, so it's under 4 metres long. But it's because the wheels are
That is quite wee.
Yeah, and it's like the Up, when you remember the Up was launched. In fact, I said it on camera, I think, because the Up had quite a long wheelbase for its overall size. The wheels were right in the corners. The Up drove like a Golf did, right?
Yes.
And this drives like that. It drives like a car that's bigger than it. And I mean that in a good way. It drives in a mature way, like its body control and its behaviour on the motorway. I took it on the motorway for quite some time. Is fantastic, really fantastic. But there's no.
I just looked this up because I didn't know it. But an Up is 3.6 metres long.
There you go. Can you rest easy tonight knowing that?
I can. Well, I mean that's small for a car, unless it's a K car, in which case that's still too big. K cars are 3.4 meters max under the law in Japan.
Talking of K cars, I got my parents a Japanese import VW Up recently.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah. They were, by the time you listen to this, they would have just collected it.
So you were able to source an auto Up, which they're quite rare here, aren't they? Quite rare here,
and because the yen is quite weak at the moment, it's not just Japanese cars coming over. There's all manner of interesting cars that you would never expect anybody to search for coming over. And the chap I know who does a lot of dry ice blasting, called Tom Smith, aka the Blast Smith, he brings over the odd interesting Japanese car. We've had many an interesting night talking about Honda Odysseys and Alphard, and he bought a few Ups over, and they're all really high spec Japanese ones. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I said my mum and dad's Golf, Bob and Sue's Cabrio, is getting a bit long in the tooth, sadly. It's time for it to go, and I thought let's go for it. So we've got a nice black 5-door high up with heated seats and everything, mate.
Yeah,
the condition is absolutely amazing, like amazing.
This is someone that we know has a little sideline in bringing in cars from Japan. And again, it's not JDM stuff. He tends to do a lot of 1 Series and 3 Series BMWs. And they're always nice spec. Yep. They're always in great condition. But they've got to sort of 7-8 years old. The stringent equivalent of the MOT in Japan just means that it's people sort of get a bit put off older cars, I think. And so they just get sent to the auctions over there.
Good thing about,
as you say, the yen to pound exchange rate at the moment favours bringing them over here.
It's amazing. Good thing about bringing maybe a 1 Series over is the fact that compared to buying a 1 Series here is you're far less likely to have to buy a car off a twat. Do you think?
Well, they must have twats in Japan, and yet I've seen some of these Beamers that our mate's bringing over, and they look bang tidy to me, and all the panel gaps are true, and all this sort of stuff. You don't sort of see an alarming amount of orange peel on a black car and think, well, that's had a clatter into a lamppost at some point.
Yeah,
they seem, and the interiors as well, really straight and nice and looked after.
Do you think there's been any of the ones that your friend's bringing over, have any of them had any kind of one-handed vapey drifting done, usually in a city or somewhere deeply inappropriate rather than a retail
here's the thing,
village?
Has the vape caught on in Japan? Because I've only been to Japan once, and it was a long time ago, but I don't know if anything's changed in terms of the Japanese enthusiasm for actual smoking.
Bloody hell, I don't know either. But what I can tell you is, having just come back from Nice, wow, I forgot how much the French enjoy a tab. Goodness me, so much smoking, so much.
Still, do you think?
Yeah. I think it's still maybe the only place left on earth where a woman can look sexy smoking. I think it might be. I don't think there's any other place.
I do think sometimes that the insouciance and general coolness with which a lot of French women carry themselves, they could look very cool if they were cleaning out a blocked loo or doing an income tax form. But I don't know. Germany's still quite big on the fags as well, isn't it?
Massive. I don't think the Germans do a vape. I don't know if they're down with it. They go old school.
No.
They want tar and filth.
Yeah.
Very much so. I found there were huge amounts of tobacco jet trailing going on while I was in Nice.
Yeah,
and I did.
Yeah. It makes the world smell different, doesn't it? It's like you forget that this country used to stink of cigarettes, and now that it doesn't. When someone does go by you with a fag on, you kind of go, "Oh, wow, smoking!" But because most of Britain now smells that sort of dusty fruit smell from vapes.
Yeah. I can neither confirm nor deny that Greg and I went out on the town on Saturday night and ended up with an absolutely rip-roarer of a hangover the next day. And I went and had my breakfast outside on my own, like a cat goes away to die.
Oh. Oh dear.
I went off on my own. I took 2 coffees and I went off and sat down on my own outside the breakfast area, and there was no one there. And then guess what happened? A fat German man burst out through the emergency doors and sat down with a plate of red meat and lit a massive cig right next to me. And I was already feeling very, 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 very sensitive post-boozy night. And the smell of the cig was absolutely horrendous. I had to move. Awful. Awful. I have to say, though, great for car spotting that night. We went around the old town, and we were having a really just lovely game of find the undamaged Twingo. It's actually a really difficult game.
Impossible, presumably.
It's almost impossible. I think
they were made with denting, weren't they?
I found one that I said, look, that one there, because I saw it in the streetlights. I looked down the side of it and went, that looks clean. That looks clean and tidy and straight. And Greg went, oh yeah, that does. And as I walked across the road and went around the other side, no, it had been driven all the way up a skip or a wall on the other side. And it even had no wing mirror on the other side.
Oh,
so it's like,
proper job.
Oh, it was serious. Serious French
Excellent.
panel. I don't think there's, I said this to him, I don't think they have body shops in France. They started out with them and they've all gone out of business. Because nobody's interested.
No one's come by.
Nobody's interested. Like, even if you had an 18-month-old Rolls Royce and somebody gouged it with a dustbin lorry, you'd still go,
that is it?
Yeah.
That is how my car now looks.
Yes, that's it forever. Even if it stays in the family for 35 years. Oh, yeah, Daddy's car got gouged by a dustbin lorry when it was 18 months old. Oh, well.
Bad news, everyone. I'm afraid I've rolled my brand new 911 Turbo, but it still drives. So, anyway, what's for dinner?
It's so true. It's so true. I kind of like it. I kind of like the attitude to it. I'd like to change my mind and get on board with it.
Yeah. No, there's a part of me the same part of me that at the moment I've done quite a lot of miles in the past 2 or 3 weeks in my 24 Tesla, and it's filthy. And one part of me goes, that should be cleaned up. And the other part goes, I wonder how long I can leave it and how mucky it can get. And it's sort of an extension of the same mentality, isn't it? How crinkly can your car get while still functioning?
Well, my brother's quite good at displaying that if you ever need any more examples of it. I think he's still got his Golf. I think my brother's actually forgotten that in order to sell a car, you have to advertise a car. I think there's some basic fundamentals that
well,
he
just thought he's trying to sell it entirely on vibes.
Yes, just
let the vibes
like pre-internet scrapyard owners used to do that down in the West Country. We'd find these really rare cars in scrapyards, and I'd make a little note of it and say to my dad, "There's an NSU R080 in the corner over there, and it's got a Cortina on its roof, but." But I looked at it and it was like 38,000 miles and it's still absolutely complete. The windows are up. It's got the alloys, the really rare alloy wheels. I said, it's amazing. And I went back there 2 weeks later because that was the next time Dad was going. And I thought, I'm going to spend some of my own money and buy some bits. And I reckon I can probably sell them to an owner's club. And it was gone. And I said, where's the NSU gone? And the guy went, we bailed it. I went. Oh. I said, why'd you do that? He goes, well, no one was interested. I said, did you advertise it? They went, no.
No.
And they are in the middle of nowhere. In the middle of nowhere.
Vibes, mate.
It's like
vibes, you know.
Do you know what I mean? It's like selling Aztec gold from a pasting table at the side of the road in the middle of like Oakhampton. Pre-internet,
but there's a hedge in the way.
There's a hedge in the way.
No one's buying the Aztec gold. I understand it. Well, you've not mentioned it to anybody.
Yeah,
no.
I'm going to give it away.
So
it's worthless.
Yeah,
clearly.
Now, look, just to change the subject in a slightly clunky way, but this episode of the podcast is sponsored by our friends at PistonHeads, and so I thought this was worth mentioning. People probably know PistonHeads. You've been on PistonHeads. I bet you were on it today. And if you've not been on it today yet, you will be later. Because if you like cars, that's the kind of place you go. And people who like browsing their classified ads probably also know that about a year ago, they started doing online auctions.
Auctions, yeah.
So they said to us, why don't you two pick a car each? And then people can go to pistonheads.com/Smith and Sniff and argue about who has chosen better. So we each pick a car from that week's auctions. To that end, something has caught my eye.
Oh, yes.
Now, you know I like an Aston Vanquish of the original type.
100%.
As in Pierce Brosnan, loose chinos, Die Another Day. That shape of Vanquish.
I know the one.
But this, so currently running as an auction, it finishes on Wednesday.
Yeah.
They've got a 2004 V12 Vanquish S, but it's a former press car. It's the car in Toro Red that featured on Top Gear when Jeremy went to the track and met up with Steve Coogan, if people remember that.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So it's been on telly, not just on Top Gear. Vicky drove it on Fifth Gear as well.
Oh, that's got some heritage to it, hasn't it?
Well, that's the thing. It raises an interesting question. And we have had people asking us this before. It's something we haven't had a chance to address in Ottersott yet. The question is, should you buy a former press car?
That's a very, very interesting question. I've just clicked up on it. 2004. It said it's also a press car that was at the Global Vanquish S launch at the 2004 Paris Motor Show. So I like this because I don't know whether it's an age thing, but I think classic cars, it's always better when they have a story. They've got a bit of an interesting past that you can dive into and latch onto. And this has got some well documented past. You've got Jeremy having driven it on Top Gear with Steve Coogan. You've got Vicky having driven it. It appeared at the motor show. Apparently, it also appeared on their website when it was launched. So I mean, it's been around. But also, see, a lot of people go, yeah, but that means Jeremy's driven it, and I think he's famously not very mechanically sympathetic. But yet, because it was a press car, it would have had to have been kept in fine fettle, probably no expenses spared, would you say? Because
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say that after every loan to a TV show or a magazine, whatever it would be, it would have gone back to the workshop at the factory.
Yeah.
And they'd have cracked out the fine tooth comb.
Yeah.
Because they don't want press cars breaking down.
No.
Or failing in any way. Those cars have got to be absolutely tippity top because they don't want to look bad. So, yeah, on the one hand, it's had a hard early life, you would assume. I mean, when it was on Top Gear, it was lapped by the Stig.
Yeah.
So that's multiple laps of Dunsfold.
Hard.
Yes, being used hard. But then it would have gone back to, I don't know where the press car garage was at that point. Newport Pagnell, I assume it might still have been there.
I reckon it probably was.
It would have had new tyres. It would have had everything checked over. I don't know if they'd have done the fluids. Possibly as a precaution they would, because they know that it's been run very hot and hard. And then it would have been cleaned meticulously as well. So compared to just some oaf who clogs it up his local bypass to show off to his mates when it's cold and then puts it back in his garage and it's wet, I think your chances are this car has actually been looked after better. So yes, it's been used hard, but it's also been cared for hard. In fact,
it's not done that many miles.
Comparison.
I've just looked.
No, that's the thing. It hasn't.
No.
They sort of rarely seem to, these Vanquishes. They are a bit sort of like special. It's only got 46,718 miles on it, according to the Pistonheads listing.
Did you read the bit about... I thought you'd like this. Did you read the bit about where it says, initially serviced by the Aston Martin press garage, without stamps in the service book, but instead with Post-it notes? Apparently this was not uncommon for a press car. I just absolutely love that. I don't know if that's not uncommon for a press car or whether that's just not uncommon for an Aston Martin press car, where there's some man in a brown store coat's gone, don't want to use up all the slots in the service book, we'll just put in Post-it notes. Yeah, I don't think Audi or Porsche would have done that, but I don't know.
They'd have just got a new service book when the first one was full up. But it's funny, speaking of which, there was a Porsche Macan in the Pistonheads auctions recently, just last month, in fact, which was also an Express car.
Oh.
And they made a point of it in the listing. You can tell Porsche Express or management cars because they have a registration starting with R for Reading, where their office is.
Of course, yeah.
So you ever see a second-hand Porsche with a number plate of the new type that starts with R, it's probably a Porsche head office car. Doesn't mean it's a press car. Could just be a management car.
Just be a Reading person.
Yeah, just someone who lives in Reading. They do have a dealership there. But but I don't know. I remember once, years ago, on old Top Gear, a viewer rang up and we'd done a montage of small cars just to open a piece. So just pulled a load of small cars that were previously filmed in the last 10 years out of the archive, put it together. And it included a Metro. And this guy rang up and he went, "Why is my wife's Metro on your show?" We looked back at it and went, "Oh, well, that's some footage from when, the new shape Metro, the R6, if you're a nerd, came out in 1990 and it was tested on the show." And so...
and this guy didn't know?
No. Well, it's the thing. He was the third owner. He bought it for his wife in 98, 99. I had to say, well, what you've got there is it's an Express car. It was one of the fleet they used to launch that car a few years ago. And then he was a bit panicked by it. He's like, "Oh no, but I didn't know that. It wasn't declared at the sale. Is that bad? Should I be worried?" I did say to him,
right, okay.
I wouldn't worry, because that's not the kind of car to have been taken to Cadwell Park and lapped until the brakes exploded, it will have only been driven on the road. It might have had a hard life, but it had been looked after particularly well. And I remember reading somewhere that those early facelift Metros were basically hand-built because they wanted the quality to be right.
For press scrutinization.
Press scrutinization. So it's quite common for press cars to go back around through the paint shop again and have, extra lacquer applied and things like that, or certainly it was. And they do tend to be, I know there's one major manufacturer based in the abroad, but they charge their UK importer thousands of pounds per press car because they insist that when those cars come off the line, they've already been ordered by the UK importer. They then go to a special facility where they're basically dismantled and rebuilt. And then the UK importer gets billed for that.
Really?
But just to make sure the quality is absolutely tip-top.
So is our consensus here, Rich, that buying an Express car we think is quite a cool idea?
I would say it's not the worry that people might think it is, and in many ways it might be quite good. And as far as this Aston goes, it's not my favourite colour for that, but it is still a Vanquish S. It has got a really interesting history, which, as you say, is always worth a bit, certainly as a conversation starter. And
yeah,
I just think that's fab. So we'll see how the auction goes on when it ends this week.
Well, I've made a pick, and
yes.
You've gone for a red car. I've gone for a green car. And that's the end of the review. Goodbye.
Okay.
No,
so, pistonheads.com/Smith and Sniff. Who's chosen better, red or green?
No, this is a Porsche 911S from '69, from the '60s, and your Aston's had 8 owners. This has had 2 owners, and that's what's interested me, because I think it pretty much got taken apart many years ago for somebody to start doing a bit of resto on it, and then it sat like that for a long time. But that makes it sound like it's a bit shonky, because it's not. It's a hell of a thing. So it was recommissioned and rebuilt in between 2020 and 2023. So it's very mechanically and paint new. And it was a 911S, and it was a 911T, and it's been upgraded to a 911 S a long time ago, though, by a Porsche specialist independent garage, probably in the 70s, we think. So it has that MFI mechanical fuel injection system, which means it's got more power and a little bit more higher revving going on in the engine department. But the thing I love was that it was sold new to a dealership in Belfast, May 69. And the original owner had it from 69 to 75. And then the second owner had it, I think, up until 2020, which is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. 75.
That is amazing.
They owned it from 1975 to 2020. Which is very cool. And the car has been repainted Irish green. Don't know whether it's which is an amazing colour, and
yes,
whether that's to celebrate the fact that it is an Irish vehicle originally. But yeah, this is a match. Still got matching engine, gearbox number. Interior's not been restored, from what I can see. But it's right-hand drive. So
yeah,
I like this.
Oh gosh,
are you looking? Are you browsing?
I know. I just I was immediately drawn to that Aston because I like Vanquishes and the extra press car provenance of it. But bloody hell, this Porsche looks amazing.
It does look very nice.
I also like the fact that in the auction listing it says the owner is clear that this car has been built and maintained to be used and is not designed to be a trailer queen.
Yes, I saw that. I thought that's
magnificent.
Good. Complete with period Ulster Automobile Club badges fitted on the rear deck. Oh,
yes.
Yeah, I'm down with this.
All these little details that add to a little backstory that just makes you feel a bit warm and fuzzy, and you know that it's had a life, but a good life. Okay, well, if you have any feelings about which of us has chosen better from these PistonHeads auction listings, then, as I said, go to pistonheads.com/Smith and Sniff, and you can have your say.
Talk to us.
We will look forward to reading your thoughts, and we will be in the comments on the forum, defending our position or agreeing with you when you call us both flutes. Either way. But thank you to our friends at PistonHeads for sponsoring this episode of Smith and Sniff.
Yes, thank you.
So, moving on, I last week you said to me, write this down, I don't want to forget talking about it. International driving permit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I think a lot of us probably have forgotten that there are still some extremely antiquated systems that must be adhered to. And one of those is the international driver's permit, which you need, especially now Britain's left the European Union and done other things. But I had to renew my international driver's permit recently, and it occurred to me that it is simply a brown piece of cardboard that is manually filled out by someone in a corner shop, and then genuinely, and then it has a stamp on it, which I reckon, I've looked carefully, I reckon I could reproduce that. And
could you just rub a black marker pen over a penny and then press it onto the cardboard and it would look authentic?
Genuinely, I could find, like, I don't know, a dead uncle's medallion and just dip it in Indian ink and then just press it half over my old passport photo. Honestly, it's just so hilariously strange. But anyway, I've got one and I've had it renewed, and it was £4. And £4?
It's even got a slightly old-fashioned price. The whole thing feels inauthentic.
It feels really inauthentic.
It's not expensive enough to carry any weight, and it's not literally carrying any weight because it's a piece of cardboard.
No, that's the thing. I'm going to the States shortly, and I needed it for that, but I'd forgotten, and I was panicking that I wouldn't be able to get it done because for some reason I thought, oh no, I've got to send it away like a passport, and oh gosh, if I don't have that, and American immigration are going to turn me away or whatever. And but I just went, I looked up online and they went, oh, you can do that at the corner shop at the top of your road. So I went, can I? So I went up
sorry, is it 1982?
Yeah, honestly, I went up there and I queued up behind a lady that bought an enormous amount of scratch cards and then 40 cigarettes. And then I said, can I get an international driver's permit? And luckily, he didn't stare at me like, what? And he went below the counter and brought out what looked like a hat box. And it had all of the necessary implements in it, rubber stamps. And I mean, it was just so quaint. And it is brown, Rich, like really manila envelope spec brown. Store coat from the 60s.
Yes.
Brown.
The 60s. I'm a bit salty about the international driving permit because it prevented me from driving a Toyota Century.
Really?
And I've never driven a Toyota Century, but many years ago when I went to Tokyo on holiday, I've mentioned this before, we had 4 days in Tokyo and I dragged my wife for one of those days to the Toyota MegaWeb.
Oh, yes.
Out by the docks, which is basically a massive car showroom. It's closed down now. And you could test drive some of the cars. And I'd looked into this in advance, I think, and it seemed that a Century was on their test fleet.
Oh, my gosh.
So when we got there, I headed straight to the test drive counter to put my name down. And I filled out this form. I went through all the paperwork. And then they went, OK, that's fine. If you come back at 11 o'clock, you'll be able to drive the car. Maybe just see your international driving permit. I was like, I haven't got one. I'm sorry, but you can't drive any of the cars without it. And that was it. My dreams were dashed.
You missed a trick there, Richard, because I know exactly what you could have done. Do you know what you could have done?
Torn out a piece of cardboard box with some driving permit on it in biro.
I actually thought, no, go, yes, I'll give you my international driving permit. I just must use your toilet. Excuse me. And I'd go, and
by the way, do you have a biro?
You'd run into the toilet, okay? You'd fashion together something on some toilet paper, fresh toilet paper. Fold it strategically so it could look like a little leaflet. Then, obviously, because you'd already knew you were going to do this, you took an espresso coffee into the toilet with you. You doused the toilet paper in dark coffee. Then you used a Mitsubishi Jet towel to dry it quickly and efficiently. And then you wrote your name and your address on it, and then you drew a picture of your own face in biro on it. and then even underneath it just says, "Let me drive a Toyota Century."
Yeah. Sir, this is unusually specific. Yes, that's how we have them in Britain. Do not question it.
And then just hand it to them. Hopefully it will be dry enough and it won't be sort of sagging. And they go, "Oh, great. Okay, for a second there we thought that you'd forgotten." No.
Don't be silly. How could one forget such an important piece of paper of this magnitude?
Exactly.
Why, this is more important than my passport.
Honestly, the international driving permit, if anybody listening to this knows the background about it and the fact that it seemingly hasn't changed for 80 years, it is just so odd. I don't get it.
It is incredibly odd, but also it just feels like in this day and age, could there not be some more joined up thinking between international driving licence issuers? So it's unnecessary. We have computers now. We don't need a small piece of brown cardboard. Which I'm going to guess, presumably, have you still got yours, or has it now become just completely crumpled and ruined and therefore invalid?
Well, I've kept all my old ones, so I'll quite happily share a photo of one of my old ones.
Yeah, you must.
Because I needed various ones for China and Japan and US and blah and blah and blah. But I've kept them because they're almost like you could take them. You could have it done at my local corner shop and then go straight to an antiques fair and sell it to, I don't know, an unassuming person from America. I go, "Did you know this was Charles Dickens' driving licence?" Go, "Really?"
You won't believe it. This is Oliver Cromwell's original international driving permit.
Oh, yeah.
For horses, obviously. I'm not being silly.
It's a horse driving licence, yes.
Horsing licence. But it's still written on brown cardboard in biro. A great British tradition.
I wanted to talk to you about something that my brother mentioned, which made him livid. It's not hard to make my brother livid, actually.
I was going to say, this doesn't narrow it down, was it? I don't know. A cloud.
Good old happy, angry Kelly. Greg. He said to me the other day, he said, "Do you know, I've been looking for..." He was looking for a car for my sister-in-law. He wants to get her something half decent. It was a good birthday of hers recently, and he feels guilty that she drives around in a panel-damaged car. But he said, I've just read a few classifieds. He said, what the fuck's going on with people that say starts first time on the key? He's like, well, what would the alternative to that be?
I mean, it's a good point, isn't it? Starts first time from a jumble of wires pulled out from under the dashboard.
That's right, exactly. That's what Greg said. He said, "Yeah, it starts every time from when I wrench handfuls of wiring loom out from under the car and just jab them together, or starts first time on that big handle that I stick through the front bumper on because it's 1921."
Don't you remember we had that listener James on the last Ottersot who was questioning the phrase "price to sell"?
Oh, yes. As
opposed to what? Price to stay here forever. Because I don't actually want to get rid of it. And this is equally stupid. Starts first time on the key.
On the key. But then, of course, with modern cars where you don't need a key in a slot anymore, would it be starts every time that you put your foot on the brake and then press the start button?
Yeah, it just starts first time when you want it to start because that's a basic... What I'm saying is it works. That's what I'm saying. It works. It's just superfluous, isn't it? If it doesn't start first time, you should probably mention that.
Yes.
But otherwise, I think it's implied by you selling a car that you're claiming has an MOT and all the rest of it. I mean, runs and drives is an easier way of saying it. But then, even then, you only need that if the car looks, extremely algal or rotten or something.
I used to love seeing those things where it would say runs and drives. I love that. Because that was always your basic of like, have we got a chance with this? Like, how awful is it?
Now, actually, I wanted to do a backgraph to something we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, which is people in your phone who are... who are entered in some car-related function that they have provided for you.
We've had some glorious letters, haven't we?
Incredible ones. I mean, and from all over the world as well. For example, a listener called Luke from the Netherlands who says that he's got a John MOT, an eBay buyer. I mean, that's eBay. Is that a traditional Dutch name? But a Twingo rims. And my favourite pair, Luke has shit Clio salesman and good Clio salesman in his phone, but it's not to do with the salespeople themselves.
Oh.
It's because one of them was selling a Clio 1.2 16 valve with all kinds of shoddy damage.
Oh.
Whereas someone else was selling an up-spec 1.6 16 valve Dynamique, which Luke says, I believe, wasn't sold in the UK, with all sorts of luxury items, including cruise control. And that was the good Clio. They both had salesmen connected to them. Other honourable mentions are Stephen Clio, who then bought the Clio off it.
Stephen Clio?
Sebastian Golf.
What?
But Luke slipped in a little name drop here, because also in his phone he has Jan Lammers.
Oh, does he?
And he's put that there because he actually has Jan Lammers in his phone book.
Now that's really cool.
Yeah, which is really cool. I mean, I was reading this and going, I wonder Lammers, is that something like a Dutch word for brake calipers? But no, it's just Jan Lammers.
Oh, that's very timely. With a recent barn find of mine being a Volvo 850 T5R. The old Lammers was a helmsman in the BTCC estate, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Our original listener, Simon, who was the one who sent us this question about people in your phone book, and we were intrigued by the fact that he had an Archie jump leads in there, because it didn't quite... we were like, why? So Simon's got back in touch. Thank you, Simon, because we can sleep now. So Simon says, my neighbours know I'm a car guy, since I'm the only person on the street with a project car in the garage, and will tinker/work on my own cars or on friends and family's cars. My neighbour across the road, who absolutely could have been a Celica lady, said she had a friend, Archie, who was in a bit of a pickle with a flat battery in his Citroen Berlingo van, and wondered if I could help. She sent me his number, hence the birth of the contact, Archie jump leads. So there we go. That's that one wrapped up. But we did have a load of other ones. One of my favourites from Matt Carter. His phone contains Cavalier Foglight Dave.
These are
no
great.
Further explanation on that one.
We could fill a gig hall with all of these people. It'd be great, wouldn't it? I'd love it. You do a pub quiz.
A listener who has asked to remain anonymous for some reason has checked his phone and said he's got Gerald Painter, Justina MR2, Morris Mel, Tony Volvo, and my personal favourite, Quentin Injection.
This is so good.
I'm not quite enough of a suave ex-used car dealer. Well, don't worry, sir. We'll give you a Quentin Injection.
A Quentin Injection. I think Mr. Wilson would absolutely love to meet Quentin Injection. Wilson, Injection, Wilson.
Listener called Tom has a few ones that you could probably work out, such as Clive Montego, Mustang Alley.
No.
Sounds like a joke.
No way.
Mustang Alley. Yeah, so he says. XJS Perkins, although that does raise the spectre of someone who's put a shit diesel engine into an old Jag. But
XJS Perkins sounds good.
Jeffrey handbrakes. You can sort of work these ones out. The ones that are more intriguing from Tom's collection are Backfiring Stephen.
Oh, but why? Why is he?
And Rusty Len.
Oh, but there's still we've been left with more questions than answers now. There's so many.
Always. I mean, that's the thing. Just to prove this is not just a British thing. We've already had Luke from the Netherlands, from Slovenia. Now I'm going to mangle this name. I'm going to go with Dejan, although it may be Dejan. I don't know what a J is in Slovenian. Dejan. Anyway, thank you, Dejan, who has Bodywork Thomas in his phone, but also Honda Ron and Tyres Samantha.
Tyres Samantha. That's just great.
There's loads of these. I haven't even pulled out half of them. We'll go back because they're too good. But if you have some car-related, slightly confusing listings in your phone book from people who've helped you out in some car-related way, or like Simon, someone that you've helped out who will forever be immortalised as Archie Jump Leads, then hello@smithandsniff.com.
We have had some great emails, I have to say. We must do a dedicated emails only compendium because it's definitely clear that the listeners are funnier than we are. That's for sure.
Yes, this is true. Very much so. Also, we will wrap this up in a sec, but before we do, I should add that on Fridays we do a half-hour spin-off show called On the Other Side of Things, in which we answer your questions. So if you have got a question for us, hello@smithandsniff.com. Put Ottersot in your email title. It means there's slightly less chance of us losing it.
Slightly.
Although it can't be ruled out. All right, well, look, we should bring this one into land because it's my wife's birthday and I've promised to take her for brunch. So,
and you'll cry if you want to. that old catchy song.
Yes. But before we go, I have three things to tell you. The first one is that Johnny is engaged in a very interesting side project to re-record a top Simon and Garfunkel hit. But he's changed the lyrics to be about our favourite female singer under the working title Hazy Sade of Winter. If that's not to your taste, there's always the late break show. What's going on there this week?
Renault 5 review, which we've talked about, involving Greg James, sweet guy. BBC Radio 1's Greg James, where we drive around Nice and decide whether we like the Renault 5 and maybe buy some confectionery. Well, patisserie stuff. But boulangerie spec. And so there's that. There's probably something else. Can't remember what it is. Oh, well, you know.
Probably. Yeah, well, go to YouTube, search the Late Break Show. Yeah, and all that.
60s. Good. Cards from the 60s, now and again.
Second thing I've got to tell you is that, as we've mentioned the past couple of weeks, we have new merch. Got a Prelude 2.2 t-shirt and cap, CMTMB. Couple of the old classics, on that side of things, and Spout t-shirts there. Go and have a look, smithandsniff.com.
Yeah.
And you will see the merchandise link very big on the homepage.
I believe
Please go buy a t-shirt, buy a cap, buy stickers, whatever you fancy. It's all there, and we will be adding some new designs in coming weeks.
We will. I think we're about to sign off It'll Do This All Day t-shirt, I think.
Yes, yes, the design that was on mugs, but we hadn't been able to put it on T-shirts. But that's
because the equipment wasn't available to do the intricate details that we wanted. But now the equipment is available.
We're pushing the envelope here. Still no pies or ties, as the song at the end makes clear. But we one day, maybe. And the third thing, I've done another local radio DJ one, haven't I?
That's a very elongated and.
Mate. Yeah, sorry. And the third thing that I have to share with you comes from a listener, Stu Morris, who points out that, you know, the high street shop Muji, it's quite apposite because we've been talking about Japanese things.
Yes.
Muji is a Japanese chain. Their name is derived from the first part of Mujirushi Ryoen, which translates as no brand quality goods. They are literally the no-name full-suspension mountain bike guy of the high street. Thank you, Stu, for sharing that. I didn't know that's
No
where
name.
Yuji's name comes from. Yeah, no brand is that's what it means.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
And on that very slightly interesting note, it's time to end. Thank you ever so much for listening. We'll be back on Friday with an Ottersott and the following Monday with another full show. Until then, goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Oh, and I saw Non-Stop Talking John the other week, and he still doesn't know, thankfully. Cheers, mate. Thanks, mate. Bye.
So you've enjoyed this podcast, but you've had a thought. Is there a way here today that you could show support? Well, you could join our Patreon, what wonders that it brings. Early shows and extra notes on that side of things. You could buy our merchandise, we've mugs and hats but still no ties. One day we will make those pies, but in the meantime, guys, hey guys, like and subscribe and maybe leave a nice review. Like and subscribe, we know you know just what to do. Like and subscribe, we don't want to take the piss. Like and subscribe, but we were told to ask for this. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
I was staying at a mate's house and I got caught going, so...
Oh, really?
A little bit too much. And so I had to explain myself.
Well, because you knew you'd said it too many times by that point.
I'd said it too many times and it sounds ridiculous. I was like, sorry, it's something... I